All right, no Frank today. C-Rob in the house. And oh my God, it's Nate Tice's music. Let's go. If there was a walk-up song for Nate Tice coming into this, what would it be?
Oh, and well, when I did play baseball, I did have a walk-up song, which was "Fat Bottom Girls" by Queen. and
That's great.
My favorite wrestling, the walk-up song that I always wanted to steal when I played the old video games was Dan Severn. If you remember Dan Severn, he a 90s wrestler. He was a UFC guy. They brought him over as like a tough man, and he had like a badass like theme song that no one has taken yet, and that's one I've always like earmarked. It's like if I was ever a wrestler, I would take that, even though I'm far, far, far from a Dan Severn type badass.
Here's the thing, C-Rob, I knew that it would go to 80s wrestling, 90s wrestling. I knew that was going to happen, and the fact that you didn't pick Macho Man is like a little hurt, and like Pomp and Circumstance is the best. Like that is the best theme song. The minute it starts, everybody's like the hair raises on your arms. Although if I was going to have a current walk-up theme song, by the way, I did a theme song for a buddy of mine when he played for the Blue Jays. I wrote it and did all that for him. But like if I was going to do a walk-up theme song now, I think it'd be the theme from The Greatest Showman. Like this is the greatest show, like with all the drums going and like the woes and everything. I feel like I would take my time coming out to a show tune, which feels apropos of me. C-Rob, do we have a walk-up song?
No, I don't do that. I don't do
no music
song.
No gimmicks needed.
I've never been remotely athletic enough to actually sit there and I played obviously sports in high school, but since then I've realized that I will never have a walk-up theme song in any walk of life ever.
I don't know, like just imagine how much better Thanksgiving dinner would be as if every single person walked in the room. They got a little bit of action coming into the room. Like, see, Rob, I feel like this would raise the spirits of everything we're talking about. Like it just brings a little, I don't know, Fat Bottom Girls is hard to top.
I like
Rob.
that.
We'll come up with one for you. Like
good start. You have to have the strong start. You know, like that's.
I'll let you guys pick a theme song for me, and the next time we all appear together, you can unveil it to me. How about that?
Let me marinate.
No, that's a dangerous proposition because suddenly it's going to get weird, and that I'm sure. Nate joining us for the first time. This is our first time coming together on this show since you joined the Yahoo family. Just want to say welcome aboard, as we have worked together in some capacities, but now you're with us all the time. It's super exciting. We're all fans of your work, and I'm only saying that because at the end of this show, you will be asked to grade what you thought of this show overall. Usually Jory gets to do that. So Nate, you're stepping into the grading role. So just think nines, like just go think nines the whole way. Everything's just C-Rob's about to bring the news. So speaking of the news, let's get to a little bit of it because there was a Brinks truck, as I said, coming into this episode, backed up, but not for a player. Before we get to that one, Kevin Stefanski, the head coach of the Cleveland Browns, Andrew Berry, the GM of the Cleveland Browns, extended. No details yet, but C-Rob, expected to be a multi-year extension. I think this says something to what Cleveland thinks of their organization right now, where they are, right?
Yeah, no doubt. And, actually, Andrew Berry's extension was done during last season. They just didn't announce it. And, that's actually news. I don't think anyone's reported that yet. But they had dotted the I's and crossed the T's. Ownership had on Andrew Berry's extension during the course of last season. It's not unusual, although these moves are typically announced in unison because you want to tie the coach and the general manager together for whatever block of time you're extending them for. Typically the general manager gets done first and then they work through the coach's deal after that. So now this means that Stefanski's deal is done. Not a surprise at all to me. I mean, you've had 4 years, he's had 2 double-digit win seasons, 2 playoff appearances, and not easy 4 years. I mean, a lot of injuries on the roster. I think last year was really truly a testament to the height of what Stefanski has been able to bring to the table there, just because of what they went through at the quarterback position. Bringing in Joe Flacco the way that they did, who's not really similar schematically to what you wanted to do with Deshaun Watson there. And I'm sure Nate can speak to that. But I think that Stefanski's ability to deal with not only the injuries, keep them competitive, even in the years that they didn't make the playoffs, and then on top of it, deal with really what's going on with Deshaun Watson. I mean, that we can't say that has not been a distraction in the organization, because acquiring him was a huge distraction. The injuries to him, not being a player who has quite blossomed into, or let's be honest, at all blossomed into what they've been paying him, has been a distraction. And yet he's maintained a really even keel. He's worked really well with Andrew Berry, who obviously I think, the roots of his extension are just the talent that he has been able to add and line that roster with. They've had the depth to deal with some of these injuries. I think it's a very positive step for the Cleveland Browns to show that we've got 2 stewards of the ship where they're the exact mentality that we want. Now we just have to get this turned in the right direction with Deshaun Watson.
Yeah. Why swerve now? Yeah. You finally kind of and what you said that Stefanski kind of showed off a little bit more kind of like some coaching, some real like stabilizing the ship on the field and what you're saying with the Deshaun Watson stuff. But him and Bill Callahan, what they did with all the offensive line injuries, running back injuries. Nick Chubb is the hub of that offense, and he goes down in the first month of the season, and 6 quarterbacks, whatever they had to play with. So, yeah, it's kind of, to me, it was, all right, I always thought Stefanski was at least an above average coach. Mm-hmm. And last year it was kind of like, why? You can't top what he did. That was his best performance. So if you're not like, you can't swerve now with, especially with a team that has not had consistency at all, a franchise that hasn't had a lot of consistency for years and years. I mean, that's kind of their thing. But also just like the AFC North, the fact that they can go toe to toe, they can make it hard on teams, and whoever you want to credit for the Jim Schwartz move, because sometimes it's the coach, sometimes it's the GM, sometimes it's the owner, but whoever you want to credit, they paid both of these guys, the head coach and the GM. So, if they split the credit, okay, they got paid for it, but that was a nice kind of turning of the page, finding something on the defensive side. So, yeah, I think the on-field product was, even with some tumultuous weeks, it was like as best it's been there. So, yeah, just keep the good times going, I think.
And Nate, interestingly, you bring up the Jim Schwartz addition at defensive coordinator, which I think, for me, at least when I looked at what they did on the field, and particularly when you talk to people in the organization, how much it meant inside the locker room, it was very much needed. I think that shows the balance between Andrew Berry and Kevin Stefanski, because I think the change was held off one extra year because Kevin Stefanski was like, hey, look, let's see if we can get this right. If it does not work, then we can make a left turn at defensive coordinator. And Andrew Berry said, all right, I'm going to let you make that call. We'll figure it out. And then we can come to a compromise if it doesn't. That's exactly what happened prior to the 2023 season when they moved toward Jim Schwartz. But I think that's almost a good measure of two guys who are taking different vantage points on the coaching staff. One who's saying, hey, this doesn't feel like it's working right now with this particular coordinator. You have some players that clearly aren't happy, but I'm not going to push this on you. I'm going to let you ultimately make this decision, which he did with Stefanski. And then when it didn't work out, obviously by the end of 2022, then they made the change in 2023. To me, I think that was a good example of how well the two worked together in Cleveland.
But that also speaks to something, C-Rob, you've mentioned several times, that it takes this synergy between front office and head coach. Like, everybody's got to be on the same page. The fact that they went through that process, nobody really felt like they ever got into the blame game, and we get where we are now. It really speaks to the fact that Cleveland feels like they're well run. I think it's important here to note that two things can be true at the same time. The Browns can believe that their roster looks great. The Browns can believe that they have their head coach, and the Browns can not be sure if Deshaun Watson has the yips, right? Like, if Deshaun Watson comes out and plays the best of Deshaun Watson's football, I don't see any reason why this Browns team, as constructed, can't be a Super Bowl caliber team. If he doesn't, then they're going to continue to have to sort of figure out a Band-Aid on the quarterback position. But none of that changes the fact that they can look around the rest of the organization. Like, we become so quarterback obsessed, we only want to talk about Deshaun as a society, when the fact is the Browns have a great roster and a great head coach. Like, this all makes sense to the way the rest of the roster is put together, Nate. And that's part of why I think that the Browns sort of did the right thing, the smart thing here, and they're staying out of the noise of whatever Deshaun is.
Yeah, staying out of the noise. Why? That's already enough of a headache, enough of it takes enough of our energy. Why change anything else? So I also think too, and what you guys were both speaking of about the synergy of this front office and the coaching staff, you go to Schwartz, and one of the thing that was damning to this defense the last few years was you could just run on them. They wanted to play this style of defense, but it was like Myles Garrett and the Garretts. Like, they just could not stop anybody. So I thought the Browns did a great job of looking themselves in the mirror and going like, all right, in for a penny, in for a pound. Ogo Okoronkwo, Dalvin Tomlinson, Shelby Harris last year, Mo Hurst. They drafted, he's gone now, but they drafted Mike Hall, who I really like, from Ohio State. They said, all right, well, we're not going to let that happen anymore. We're going to give Zadarius Smith. We're going to give Myles Garrett a ton of help. So I just kind of like that. The Chiefs had done a decent job of that as well. It's like, this was a weakness. Let's not just do a half measure, which is kind of, all right, our O-line sucks. Let's not just get one starter. Let's get 4 starters. It's like, really replenish this line. So again, I think they are trying to have some reflection of what their team is, and then you just always have to have just the Deshaun-sized elephant in the room, always on the field and off the field too. So that's the other thing that they've managed to mitigate.
I mean, the real question then, before we wrap out of this, is like, you're talking about a division that has the Ravens and the Bengals. And the Bengals are going to believe, if we're going to apply benefit of the doubt, see, Rob's heard me say this a million times, Nate Tice, but if we're going to apply benefit of the doubt, we have to apply it evenly to everybody. So I'm going to presume in this situation that the Bengals get the best of Joe Burrow and he stays healthy, because that's what everybody wants to have happen right there. I'm going to presume that the Ravens continue to be the Ravens. If we presume that Deshaun comes out and plays well, C-Rob, where are they in the lexicon of the AFC North in your mind?
Well, look, I think they're capable of going toe-to-toe with anybody in the division if Deshaun plays well. But, I mean, what does that look like? Let's be honest. I mean, we have not seen peak-level Deshaun Watson ever for the Cleveland Browns. Now, people are they'll point at, last season, well, what about the Titans game? There's a couple of games here or there, some stretches where they'll say, here's what he looked like. This is really what the upside is. I don't agree with that. I don't think we've seen any way, shape, or form what the upside is of Deshaun Watson is in Cleveland yet. I don't think he's realized it as a runner. I don't think he's realized it as a passer. I don't feel like he's fully had a grasp on anything up until this point. And I don't know how much of the off-field stuff's had to do with that. I don't think it's the personnel around him, because to me, it's concerning from a Deshaun Watson standpoint, if I'm being honest. It's concerning when Joe Flacco gets off his couch and all of a sudden I'm like, wow, the offense got really vertical fast. Amari Cooper.
Wow, there's
David
a lot more
Njoku.
Fireworks.
Oh,
Look at that.
It was nuts. It was crazy. It was downfield, big plays, chunk plays, all these different
which fits Deshaun's play style. Which is
right.
Yeah.
And so like I hope, and maybe Nate can speak to this. Like I don't know if it is the injuries. Again, I don't know if it's the year off, I've said before about Deshaun, there's a little bit of like this Odell Beckhamish quality where we keep talking about this Deshaun, this like sort of high shelf for Deshaun that we have not seen in a while. It's been a few years now since we've seen that Deshaun Watson. And oh, by the way, the year that he had that great year, his last great year in Houston, they were 4-12. Okay, so that calculus is not in place yet. So I don't even think we can speak to how good this team can be, not only in the AFC North, but in the entirety of the AFC, if they actually can get him to where they were projecting him outward. I'd love to hear Nate explain what the hell. I've never really been able to adequately explain why he has just not been able to get back to the confident player that he was really in Houston.
That's it. He was always a high wire act. Like he was going to take sacks, but he mitigated it with huge explosive plays. His legs, he pushed the ball. That's why Will Fuller was so perfect for him. That's why DeAndre Hopkins were so perfect for them, because he just chucked it up to him, let him make plays.
Big time.
That's it. And that's what he was just doing over and over. And now with the Browns, I that first year we kind of started, a chunk of games, and I kind of threw that out. I peeked at it. I was like, hey, I'm going to give you on field some benefit of doubt what you play. And then watching them this year, everything's a step slow. I wouldn't even say a step and a half slow.
Right.
The Colts game is the one that stands out to me, where he was taking hit after hit, and he got banged up in that game, I believe, before the half. And in that game, everyone goes, oh, the O-line was leaky there. And it's like, well, he held on the ball 2 extra seconds. And he's not trusting to launch those throws and give the 50-50 balls, or again, he's not finding the nickels and dimes, the singles and doubles that kind of like keep it afloat. So it's just a lot of negative plays after negative play after negative play, and it's just nothing to mitigate that. And it just feels, mentally, it does feel like he has rust. Like it feels like he's a lot of rust mentally, because he's always been a guy that holds the ball long, but it feels just
that's exactly right.
It was with a purpose before.
Sure.
It was to find something. Now it feels like he's just wishing something open, and then something bad happens after that.
And you speak to it, Nate. Like that's living here in Houston and having been here for those the best years. If you didn't live here and you weren't watching him all the time, and you spoke to it, he would hold the ball. He would take hits where you're like, damn, man, you are taking so much punishment. Yep. And people are constantly complaining about the line, but I'm like, no, he holds things to make big plays. And even times where he's taking off and running, he's putting himself at risk. I don't know that that's ever changed in him. And that's what scares me now in Cleveland is we're still waiting for this to all come together for him. But even if it all comes together, I'm still wondering, is he still that player that takes that punishment? Which now you worry about because some of the injuries that are stacking up.
Yeah.
Can you coach it out of him though, Nate?
That's what I actually would say. Stefanski has been trying really hard to kind of get they're a bruising team. The Browns want to punch you in the mouth. They had Bill Callahan for a reason. They want to run the ball. Nick Chubb is their guy for a reason, or was. Hopefully he comes back to it. But I thought Stefanski, and he spoke to it a few times, was really trying to merge what Deshaun does well. Go to more empty, sprinkle in some more RPOs. But again, that's supposed to be his strength. And there's a lot of times that he's just dancing back there, waiting for something to come open, or just that doesn't have that confidence to go to 1 to 2. So to me is that he hasn't done it before, and he still is not doing it with different coaches doing it with different personnel, with a pretty good offensive line that did fall apart. I will say that, but it wasn't helping it at all. So it can be coached, but it needs confidence, because you have to stand in there and know where you have to go with the ball and get rid of it before you take that shot. He, again, got rid of it before by bouncing around, buying that extra half second to get rid of the ball. So, Jason, to answer your question is yeah, you can coach it out, but I think right now he's on a path that it might be kind of just irreversible. And it's just that you have to find ways to limit the damage.
Remember too, there's no Callahan there anymore.
Right.
You've lost arguably, next to Jeff Stoutland. I mean, you're talking about one of the best position coaches in all of the NFL.
5 O-line coach all time.
I mean, just a masterful offensive line coach, and now he's not there. So that also scares me. Like, what is this going to look like? Post Bill.
And the defense was legit playing as one of a top 10 defense in the last 20 years. And defense is just, even if it's very good and a top 10 defense, it's not top 10 defense in the last 20 years. You know what I mean? There's a difference between very good and elite. So that's hard to just replicate. Even if I do like the personnel, and I think Jim Schwartz is going to find a way, it's going to be a very good defense. That helped them stay afloat when they had some of those woes with Deshaun or all the injuries and stuff on the offensive side of the ball.
In my mind, the Browns are going to be one of the most interesting storylines of this year, because I could see it going incredibly well, and all of a sudden Cleveland finally gets that championship caliber team that they're rooting for, or this thing can fall wildly off the rails. And then if it does, the noise around Watson is going to get absolutely unbearable. A lot of noise this offseason about Justin Jefferson. In fact, we even heard rumors that he was being shopped. There were phone calls where they're going to trade him, all of these things. Well, that got quickly quieted this week with the news of an extension, 4 years, $140 million, $110 million guaranteed. I mean, unbelievable. When you talk about, not saying Justin Jefferson doesn't deserve it, C-Rob, but when I saw that kind of money, highest money for a non-quarterback, it just sort of shook me, that the realization that when you are the best of the best, no matter what your position is now, you are going to get the bag.
Yeah, I mean, and that's a real contract. When you look at that, you're like, this is legitimate. And to me, what's shocking is I can remember all these different contracts over the year. I mean, I covered the league for, it's going on 24 years now. And I can remember all these different contracts that felt like something changed in the matrix. Like, I remember when Ndamukong Suh got that contract from the Miami Dolphins, and I had someone in the league go, what the hell do we pay quarterbacks now? Like, we just paid a defensive line, almost $19-20 million a year. And, basically he was like, just wait, like, what's coming now? And this is what you foresee. But when I sit there and I look at this, I think, like, all these years when I would talk to general managers, the cap people, when I would talk to coaches, it was always, hey, you pay for it. There's 4 positions. You pay your quarterback, you pay your dominant elite offensive tackle, you pay your elite pass rusher, and then you pay the coverage corner, the man, somebody who can cut the field in half. Welcome to the party, wide receivers, because this is now who you pay. It's not a 4-person rotation you pay. It's 5, because this isn't just Justin Jefferson. It's going to be CeeDee Lamb's going to come up next. It's going to be Jamar Chase will probably beat this deal by $1 or more. And so the elite of the elite, the top 3, 4, 5 wide receivers in the league are $35 million a year players, or $33 to $35 million players. And what I wonder, and I've been dying to ask Nate this, and I waited until the podcast to ask him this: how the hell do you how do you make a wide receiver worth $35 million a year when it's not a player who either affects the quarterback, protects the quarterback, and I'm talking about every single play, because wide receivers do not affect the quarterback necessarily every single play. I mean, I wonder that $35 million, how you can justify that long term for a wide receiver. That percentage of the cap bite you're taking out with a guy.
Yeah, I've been dragged kicking and screaming into the receiver or premium position discussion, like as like anointing them as one, because just what you're saying, Charles, I've always kind of been of that the receivers are lower on that premium position kind of spectrum. You know, in baseball, they have like the defensive position spectrum. I kind of look at that as contracts. Quarterbacks are always going to be the top one. To me, it's edge rushers too, because they are the ones that affect the quarterback first. They are closest to the ball. It's a literal physics thing. And then you just get into, well, who blocks that? Oh, tackles. Oh, okay. All right. So there's 3. And then you can get into the receiver and corners and go down that path. But to me, Justin Jefferson is, you pay the 99 overalls. And I'm fine with setting the market with that. Jefferson, to me, is one of the few guys that changes coverage looks and actually positively affects the run game without even blocking anybody. We talk about gravity with basketball players. Justin Jefferson is one of these guys. I would say Devontae Adams last few years is one. CeeDee Lamb has actually started to draw this type of coverage, but they draw cover 2 over to their side. Cover 2 is easier to run against. Sure. What was frustrating with the Vikings 2 years ago was they were getting the juiciest, best run looks you'll ever see, and they're running like 2 yards a pop, like 3 yards a pop. This year, they said, all right, how do we beat that? Well, they invested a little more in the run game. They got the tight end, Josh Oliver. You know, they got Addison to help out Jefferson and everything. But that, to me, already speaks to, well, we're already trying to help out the guy that's supposed to help us out. You know what I mean? Like, we're already trying to help out the $35 million guy, but this is before they paid him and everything. So Jefferson, though, is a 99 overall. That's it. To me, CeeDee Lamb, Ayuk, once we're getting past CeeDee Lamb, we're getting there. You know, he's maybe to that 99. But then Ayuk, to me, is like, okay, well, I'm not going to pay him that. I'll pay him, you know, maybe just a step down, a tier down below. Like, he shouldn't be, just because Jefferson's resetting the market doesn't mean every guy after him should. You know how Aaron Donald got paid and then nobody has touched it for years? Right. Kind of the same thing I feel like for Jefferson. But I'm sorry.
Are you buying never seeing single high safety? I mean, is that what you're buying, basically?
That's what you're saying. Yes. And you're saying that we have this rookie quarterback and he's going to make his life easier and everybody else's life easier. That's what you're trying to buy. And that will never get blitzed because if you blitz them, then you more or less might have single coverage on Jefferson.
Right,
yes.
Yeah.
It's the same math. And it's just ironic that it's the Vikings again. This is the same stuff that Randy Moss used to get, is that if you have Randy Moss on your team, you're getting cover 2 every week. And Belichick just talked about that. He said, I don't know why you're watching film. We're getting cover 2 every week. And that's how Jefferson gets treated. That's how Devontae Adams kind of gets treated still. And so that kind of changes it for you. That makes it easier on the quarterback and easier on your other guys, and should be easier on your run game. But that's what you're, in essence, trying to buy.
So, but let me be a math nerd for a minute. And I'll have to credit ESPN Stats and Info because they helped me with this before I left ESPN last year. So this does not account for last year. But we took a look at a 10-year period leading up to last season. And over the course of the 10-year period, this was my deep dive. And the highest paid player at every position for that year. We looked at every single one of them. If you looked at a 10-year period, taking kickers out, so we're talking no specialty players. If you look at a 10-year period, over the last 10 years going into last season, only one player that was the highest paid at his position, Rob Gronkowski, ever won a Super Bowl in a year where he was the highest paid player in his position. So, like, as much as we're saying, okay, like the crux of my argument, the reason we looked it up was because people say don't pay quarterbacks. My argument was, can you pay any position? And the answer is no. So
no, Fitz, wait. So no quarterback won a Super Bowl in a year they were highest paid player.
That they carry the
any position?
Average annual value. Every position. We looked at every single position. All 22.
Really? Rams in 2021 with Donald?
Wow.
No, he wasn't highest annual value.
Chris Jones may have been higher.
Need some Yahoo Stats and Info.
So again, I want to credit the guys that put a lot of work into finding that number. But we went over a decade period. All 22, again, not counting kickers and punters. We decided they don't count. And we just looked at all 22. Rob Gronkowski is the only player that ever won a Super Bowl in a year he was the highest paid. So my question is like in some ways, the data says you can't pay anybody. But if you're going to pay somebody, you should pay Justin Jefferson, right? Like, so it's sort of a damned if you do, damned if you don't situation, see, Rob?
Fitz, you just gave everyone. Honestly, if that really holds true, that is an amazing betting tool. I just want to say, like, I would sit there and go, okay, who's the highest paid quarterback? Take them off they're not going to win the Super Bowl. Who's the highest paid running back?
Highest paid tackles, the Lions.
Can you literally whittle down a Super Bowl winner by just simply removing the highest paid player at every single position? This is crazy. I think we need to actually try this out and see which team has the best roster
Guard
without
is the
any of the
Eagles.
highest paid players.
Dickerson. Okay, so we already knocked off two. Or two. Those
Okay.
are two
Yeah.
decent teams. Yeah, we'll just have to go one after
I
another.
will go back
That's
to my
interesting.
buddy. I'll go back to my
I
buddy
love
that
this.
helped me with it very off the record. I'll text him and I'll see if he can run the numbers for me again to do the most recent span of 10 years now that we'll include
We're
last
going to
season.
get like a 12-1 shot or like a 15-1 shot just based on Fitz bringing that to the table right here.
Average
This is
annual
gonna be
value. You can't be the highest paid player at your position that year. You
awesome.
just can't.
AAV. That's what we're talking about. AAV.
But for that year, yes. For
Okay,
that
yeah.
your cap number
For
that
that
year,
Yeah,
your
no
number
Chiefs
that year is the
3-peat.
biggest. No
No
Chiefs.
Chiefs
3-peat.
3
See, but the funny thing is that I only used that to get into the quarterback conversation. But this was really like the devil sort of argument here, where you've got great players at this point. Like you mentioned, CeeDee Lamb and Ayuk and T Higgins, and they're not in the same category. But they got to look at 35. Like they got to look at 4 years, 140 million, 110 million dollars, and say, okay, I
It
might
raises
not
boats.
be that, but like
Right.
I'm pretty damn
Raises all
close.
boats. Yeah. Are you kidding me? Like everybody who's not a quarterback should be thrilled with this right now.
Yeah.
Like corners are sitting there going, wait a minute. We cover these guys. Like, okay, we don't have right now. Do you realize there's not a single corner in the league who's making $25 million or more AAV? And by the end of this rotation, I think there's going to be like 19 wide receivers who are 25 million or more. 19. Like how insane
how
is
do you
that?
build your roster then? Like, look, the Eagles are doing it right now, 2 wide receivers and a quarterback. But man, how are you building? Maybe I just am stuck in the old days of like, man, there's not enough cap space. But like, how?
You find ways
Nate,
to
I
do
don't
it.
understand how.
Bonuses, you can find ways to do it. But to me, it's, I mean, this last receiver class, but then I'm already looking ahead. Next year's class, it's not as deep already. This way far ahead look ahead. As far as the draft, like, it doesn't feel like the market's kind of like oversaturated. Like, kind of like, all right. Have we hit a limit? Like Michael Pittman, really? Like you're going to get that? But now the Michael Pittman deal actually looks decent after seeing what everybody else is kind of going through. But what's been interesting to me, and there's also, you got to remember market. Like you got to remember that if there's a huge supply of these guys, like that's what's been funny with me with the defensive tackle discussion. Everyone's like, wow, now it's a premium position. Well, it's also 4 years after there was a draft with like 7 defensive tackles in the first round. It's kind of like, just that's all you have to do. It's just they got drafted then. All right, their contracts come up 4 years later. That's how it's going to work. But I think the receiver one, to me, again, Jefferson excluded in this. It's, man, really, these guys have to be game changers to me to be paying them 28 mil, 27 mil. Like you better be changing a lot to me. To me, it seems better to spread it out to maybe 2 guys and keep them around that high teens number. But again, that's a perfect world. That's a perfect market and everything. But I feel like some teams are just looking at the draft and going, wait, this is deep every year. Let's find some second or third rounder and just hopefully, maybe draft 2 of these guys like pitchers in baseball rather than paying the guy
CeeDee Lamb
the
that
huge
guy
money
to
to get that. CD, yeah. I would pay CD. Maybe not Jefferson money, but a tick below that. What CD did last year, moving from being from the slot only guy, a really good slot only guy, to now a true X winning as an isolated receiver, that changed him for me because he showed it. So
that's the Cowboys. They're going to do that. By the way,
Yeah,
they're
they
going to pay. I think right now what's going on between the Cowboys and CD, I don't think the Cowboys want to make CeeDee Lamb the highest paid wide receiver in the league because oddly enough, I think behind closed doors, there's this idea of like, we're really still going to try and get all 3 of these guys, Micah Parsons, CeeDee Lamb, Dak Prescott signed. Is there a possibility we can get the 3 signed without making any of the 3 the highest paid player at their position? And basically saying to these guys, look, you're going to be right there. Okay. But we're not putting any of you at the top of the heap because we're going to try and share this massive cap load between the 3 of you guys. That is, there's only a handful of teams that are going to have that kind of a cap load between 3 players. By the way, quick stat correction. It's $22 million AAV and more. There will be 18 to 19 wide receivers, but still 0 corners, $22 million or more. If you are a prep player right now and you're choosing between wide receiver and cornerback, maybe think, the wide receivers are where the money is flowing. Real quick, just to touch on that whole idea of the cap load carrying 3 guys. So for a while now, if you're confronted with this kind of a problem where you have 3 gargantuan, now the Vikings aren't because they have JJ McCarthy at quarterback. That helps them be able to balance this out. They can, rob Peter to pay Paul as you move on down the line with rookie contracts. But when you look at the Lions, it's a good example. Lions paid Goff, they paid Penei Sewell, they played Amon-Ra St. Brown, right? All massive deals. But when you focus it downward and you look each year, the worst hit they take with those three deals coinciding, intersecting at once, is 2026. And I think it's something like $130 million is on the books between those three players. Now, where the cap projects in 2026, and this might be a little aggressive, but I think it's realistic, is about $320 million. Now, when you do the math, that's between 39 and 40%. And that's kind of this secret number that teams are, if they're ever confronted with this issue, they never want to commit more than 40% of any single cap in a given year to their three highest players. They don't want to exceed that 40% number. Now, I have no clue what research has gone into this, how they've determined don't cross that 40%. Like, that's the red line. When you get past the 40%, then you're really starting to hurt the rest of your roster. I have no idea how you pay the other 50 players on the roster, the remaining 60%. But as teams sort of lay this out moving forward, and I think the 49ers are a team that they're going to have to think about this, right? I mean, because they're everybody that they're paying. So they're going to have to start looking at cap load for their top three paid players. The Lions, obviously, Philly is there with the guys that they're paying. So all these elite level teams, that's really the juggling that they're dealing with right now. So when people see all these massive deals come for a single team, where they see wide receivers paid 35, or you see the Eagles paying Devonta Smith, and then also AJ Brown, and then also Jalen Hurts, just always keep that 40% number in mind as cap years project out.
And Saquon Barkley and Dallas Goedert
and yeah, like
and Landon Dickerson and Dre Mailata.
I mean, look how with Howie, isn't it like I think Howie, it's just sort of like, we'll just replace in the draft. Like, we'll figure it out. Like, we'll just draft good guys. Like, we'll always have the balance that eventually we're going to have to go to the table and let some of these guys go or rework deals. And if we can't, we'll resolve it by picking players in the draft that will hit.
It hits me as you say that. You said the projected 2026 salary cap number is $326 million?
It's right now, I mean, it depends who you talk to, because there's conservative estimates, there's aggressive estimates, but 320-ish, like right in that 320 to 330 range is where 2026 is projecting to.
The next time somebody asks why Roger Goodell still has a job.
Oh, yeah.
The NFL salary cap, I looked it up, in 2016, which would be 10 years before the number you're talking about, was $155.27 million. So the three contracts you're talking about now eating the 40% are basically eating what the salary cap was as a whole in 2016. I'm not talking about 96. I'm talking about 2016.
Fitz, this is nothing. Just wait until they opt out of their TV deals in 2029, because they're sitting there looking at this NBA deal that's going to come down the pipeline, today, right? And they're going, wait a minute. The NBA is about to do a $70+ billion, a 10, 11 year contract. The NBA, they're sitting there going, we're opting out in 2029, and we're going to try and double our TV deal, which means in 2030, the cap's going to be like $500 million for every single team, man.
I know. Just imagine the streaming too, like what they're doing. They're chopping up the days.
Yeah, it's crazy.
So now they go, that's the Sunday package. Wait till you see this Wednesday package we got cooking.
They just figured out, they literally figured out how much a game costs on Christmas now.
Yeah.
and for a reason. I know we got to move on, but there's also this thought concept in me for 97 of the top 100 Nielsen rated events last year were sports. And when people keep even asking me about the NBA, how did they get that much money for a product that, if you listen to national media shows, everybody tells you it's suffering? The answer is there are very few places left in the world where you can't DVR it, watch it later, and skip the commercials. You are a captive audience during a football game for 3 hours. You have no choice but to listen to the ad for whatever company they're putting in front of you, which means ad companies, because they have less and less area to actually get that capture, are going to spend more on the areas that are actually working. If all of the top 20 events on TV are football games, then football is just going to keep making more and more money. Speaking of money, I know we got to go to break, but when we come back, the other sports right now are dealing with huge controversy within gambling, but there is a tie-in to the NFL. We'll get into that. Plus, buying and selling some minicamp headlines. That is all still to come. Boys, let's talk some gambling. As a degenerate, this show, Nate, is usually represented by two degenerates, because Frank and I should not be in the same casino together. And I'll just admit it. But as a dabbler, let's say, in the art of gambling, if you want to call it that, It was interesting to me because we've had a couple of big stories in sports right now. And Jonte Porter was banned for life in April after purposefully limiting his own performance in a game in which he bet unders on prop bets related to himself. Like that's real. Like there's nothing that takes this away. And now we have baseball involved in this also, as Padres infielder Tucupita Marcano banned for life from MLB yesterday for placing bets on the Pittsburgh Pirates while he was on the Pirates IL last year. He placed 387 baseball-related bets over a 13-month stretch. Only won 4.3% of his wagers. Not very good at this. So, and you know, we've all listened to a summer full of Shohei speculation, right? But you start looking at it and saying, hey, I mean, C-Rob, we were at the Super Bowl. Roger Goodell was asked up front about this. Shereen Williams asked about gambling in these games. Like, there has to be a level of the NFL that continues to be concerned with how many professional athletes in other sports right now are getting busted doing what they know they cannot do.
Yeah, especially prop bets. And that's the thing with the Porter situation. What was interesting about this, he had a couple of games where he removed himself early, right? And basically what happened was Vegas noticed. Vegas was like, wait a minute. Like when we're looking at prop bets for this particular day, there's this prop bet on Porter that's way outside the norm, you know, of what the bets are. And then it happened again. And then at that point you're like, okay, like this is twice with the same guy in kind of a similar situation where he removes himself from a game and thus falls under, right, the prop bets. And to me, I have said over and over, I think it is a half measure by any league and very much so by the NFL to ever allow any athlete while they are playing a professional sport to gamble, period. I mean, Michael Jordan golfing at the craps table, I mean, you know, betting on sports, whatever it is, because you work in a profession in which people are gambling on you. They are gambling on your performance. And you going out and gambling only opens a window for you to basically fall into a situation that's being alleged by the feds in terms of Porter, that you fall into gambling debt. And then you are now vulnerable because you got to pay back this gambling debt, again, allegedly. And how do you do that if you don't have the money? Well, you have the opportunity to fix. And that's what it is. Like we can say whatever we want about, oh, well, he affected prop bets or whatever. You are fixing something that's happening that's supposed to be unfixable, right? When we watch live sports, we're supposed to believe it's real, that these players aren't doing something manufactured in order to affect a betting market. If you do that, you are fixing a portion of a game, and thus the game itself is in some way fixed. So in my mind, I know people argue, well, hey, athletes should be allowed to bet like anybody else. I disagree. You are in a different job than anybody else. There are jobs that people hold where you're not allowed to just go and do everything that everybody else is allowed to do. In particular, when, you know, you work for the DEA, there are certain things you can't do. When you work in professional sports, there's things that we at Yahoo Sports aren't allowed to do because we work for Yahoo, right? We can't go and take another job doing this or that. I mean, there are workplace rules. So in my mind, I think this Porter situation is a very glaring example of the worst case scenario for leagues, is that a player fell into debt allegedly and then went out and did, you know, fixed a portion of a game allegedly to mitigate gambling debt that they had fallen into. It's wild to me that the NFL has not sat there and just said, look, we got to take a hardline stance on this. Go ahead and bet the day after you're out of the league. You file your retirement papers, you're good. You know, you're off of a team. You're not in the league system. You're not on any kind of a squad. Fine. You want to gamble? Great. But you got to make sure you're done. You're done with our league, and then you can do whatever you want after that.
Growing up, I mean, shoot, it was, you don't even talk about it. You couldn't even step in a sports book.
Yeah.
The old NFL rules. My dad got fined for referencing a field goal at the end of the game and saying some people are going to be happy about that, and got fined for that. That's how strict it used to be, because NFL kind of, you know, if you ever look in the origins of the NFL, just look at how some of these owners acquired some of their teams. They never wanted to bring that up. They never wanted to bring up, like, this is a real product. These are like, this is this. If you want to watch professional wrestling, watch it fixed, you know, or you want to watch, this is why the NFL wanted to be different than boxing back in the day and prize fighting back in the day, because 50-50 shot, this match will be fixed that we're, you know, probably going to be trying to bet on you know, on the black market and everything. But to me, it's just the NFL, at least football, harder to do with 22 people on the field and not everybody touching the ball.
Fix the score, right? But prop bets, though.
Prop bets and everything is the ridiculous thing. To me, the rule I've always liked is just kind of what I grew up with, was that if you are in a league, you can't bet on sports, period. Always the loophole was horse wagering, because it was pari-mutuel. Again, look at the owners of the NFL and how they acquire their money in horse racing. So that's why there was always a loophole for that. But in table games and everything. But that's how I grew up, and I still have kind of considered that, even if they've changed it and they made it lax. And I'm all about, like, players having more power over their lives and not, as maybe draconian rules over them. But to me, it's kind of like don't even bring questions to it. Like when Jameson Williams got hit with the stuff last year, everyone's like, man, that's harsh. He was betting on other stuff. It's like, no, but it's zero tolerance. They get told this, 20 times. Like, do not bet on this, because you're bringing a question mark to all our livelihoods. I mean, because now people draw a question. Well, the refs fixed. They're doing this. I mean, just look what else is happening right now.
Listen, guys, Fitz, you're going to move to Vegas. Nate, you live in Vegas, right?
Yeah.
My entire life, I will never forget the second Vegas Duke game. Okay. And the second run in Rebels, Larry Johnson, Stacey Augmon. And
I will never so hard.
My entire life, I will never forget. Hey, watch the turnovers early in that game. Watch this, watch that. Hey, remember the famous hot tub photo of Larry Johnson, these guys in the hot tub with a gambler? Like, and to me, that's exactly what you don't want. And that was like 1990. Okay, this is 34 years later. Now, I'm just telling you, it only takes one Porter in the NFL to pull himself out of a game, to get hurt, I'm dinged. Take me to the blue tent, fail a concussion test, doesn't come back or whatever. It only takes one running back fumbling a couple of times that look a little weird. And
I mean, to that point, C-Rob, it only takes one official to change the way everybody views officiating in the NFL.
The Tim Donaghy thing is still the craziest thing. Like the Tim Donaghy
thing, we just accept that happened.
Yeah, but like that is the reason that every time an official blows a call in an NBA game, somebody comes out and says, "Well, it's fixed." And when I say no, it's not, it's like, "Well, Tim Donaghy," like that is the answer. And you guys mentioned rules. I always thought it was funny. Like when I first joined the Van Perry, because there were so many young fans. There was a very strict rule on that tour that we were not allowed to drink. And so when we were they didn't want, the fiddle player out in the crowd.
This is a really good example.
Like running around drunk. So we were on the Brad Paisley tour with Scotty McCreery, who was not yet 21. We were dry, and Brad Paisley does not allow his band guys to drink. So we went out every night to finish the whole show for the encore for a song called Alcohol, and everybody would raise little glasses. They had vitamin water in our glasses. Like, it was a dry tour. And there were some people that would come on our tours and they would complain about that. My whole thing is like, man, you got the gig. We are touring the world to play the number one song in the world. And you want to complain about the fact that you have to, you just can't have a drink when you're on this bus. Like,
there's a trade-off, right, Nate?
There's a trade-off. Yeah,
it's a privilege. It's a privilege, not a right. That's
100%.
That's the phrase I was told. It's a privilege, not a privilege to play in this league, to be associated with this. It's like, these are the trade-offs that you have to do. At the time, can't smoke weed. You can't do drugs. That's the trade-off. Like, that's the stuff like that you can't do. Like, yeah.
I don't know if you guys saw the clip. It wasn't, I don't think it was this NBA season. I think it was the last one. And remember, now we have more phones than ever. We have more camera angles than ever, right? So we see things like facial expressions. And there was a clip. It's going to drive me crazy. I can't remember what game it was. It was an NBA game. And an NBA player missed like a bunny, right? And in the background, there was an official, an NBA official, who threw his head back. And everybody jumped on it. They were like, whoa, what the hell is that? Like, what is that reaction from this official? Why does he care that this player missed a bunny? And it could just be the human reaction where you're like, oh my God, what a terrible
shot.
Yeah, like, geez, what are you doing, man? But it draws in the conversation on social media. It brings in this fear of that doesn't seem right. And it draws suspicion. And that is not what the NFL does not need this, because we already have the script nonsense bullshit as it is, right? And there are legitimately people who, I swear to God, there are wackadoos out there who really truly believe that there are games that are scripted, that there's a reason why people really believe the Taylor Swift actually made sure that the Chiefs were going to win the Super Bowl once that whole thing came together during the course of the season. I mean, you don't need extra, okay? So I thought Fitz, what a great example like of
thanks.
here's the thing you have to give up to be able to live in this world.
I will say in defense of the city I was born in Vegas, my mom always laughed when people would come up and say that casino games are fixed. And there are a lot of people that believe there's a magnet or whatever. And my mom was a casino manager as a kid. And she would always say, no, we don't have to fix anything because people are stupid and they will give in to their impulse. And she was right. Like, nothing's fixed. She's like, people will eventually just give us back the money. That's the way it works. And so I do say, the more that we've seen this in college, we've seen this in sports everywhere. The more we see people getting caught, it is a reminder that the systems in place are, to a degree, working. So I think there is something about the fact that, like, hey, as much as everybody's saying, oh my God, I can't believe it's another player, I look at every time somebody gets busted doing it, I'm like, thank God that there are so many regulations in gaming now that it isn't the mafia running a casino, et cetera.
They're really good at counting money here.
Yeah.
Especially when they lose their money. They go, why did I lose that 500,000 right there? Yeah. They're really good at finding that out here.
Let me counter this, though. Okay. Let me counter one thing. From the NFL's perspective, okay, let's say there is an extinction level moment, right? Gambling wise. Let's say it is a very prominent player. Let's say it is and again, the Tim Donaghy stuff, in terms of like fixing game, none of that was ever proven. That's not, you can go ahead and watch the documentary and form your own opinions. But let's say, though, there is an event in the NFL where a player gets caught. Maybe that's let's say the Shohei Ohtani question arises in the NFL. Now, obviously, Shohei's interpreter has said, I'm the one who made the bets. He's, pled guilty. He's looking at significant
prison time or something like that.
But let's say it's someone who's very vital in the middle of the NFL systems, got a long-standing history. Can you honestly, and I'm asking both of you this, can you honestly tell me, with the league's history and how it's handled other things and trying to avoid the asteroid strike, there's not going to be a motivation to go, we have to make this go away? It's the same question that was asked about David Stern and Michael Jordan, right? Why did Michael Jordan step away? Why did he step away for a year and a half when he, supposedly had these millions of dollars in, gambling debts on the golf course or whatever? Was there something else there? Can you tell me you really, truly believe that the NFL and the NFL owners are not going to sit there and go, if we can get rid of that, if we can brush that under the rug, if we can fix that and make sure it doesn't come out, you cannot tell me they would not have the motivation to do that.
As Fitz knows, the show goes on. The show must go on. That's I think that's NFL's stance, no matter what the incident is. We've seen a lot of stuff happen the last couple of years. So
you think they'd even survive that? You think?
I think so.
I think
what did we just talk about with the money and the rights in the Justin Jefferson contract and the cap? Like, it's I'm not saying it's disco stew.
As long as people watch.
Forever, people are going to watch. And I think it does have to be somewhat prominent. It has to stick. It has to be so much to it. We just saw a first round pick, top 15 pick, get kind of hit for something.
It would have to be like Pete Rose, right? Remember when Pete Rose?
Yes,
that was unbelievable in the 80s.
It has to be a quarterback.
A prominent quarterback on a Super Bowl caliber team that suddenly gets eliminated, and you find out that they played the under on their own prop, and then all of a sudden,
And to me, this is it's the ones that, even comes back to our positional talk. It's the ones that handle the ball the most. They're the ones that are most susceptible to it. Also, the ones that are on the fringe of the roster, they're the most susceptible to it. That's why Porter got hit. Yeah, those guys are the ones that are going to get hit because they're not making.
I don't know though. Like, man, think. I just think
if
we're gonna
guys
worry
can't
about
afford these guys.
Yeah,
now.
but now you get NIL money coming out of college. Like some of these kids are coming in fringe roster kids. Are they coming in with debts? Are they coming in with situations they got to work out?
And there's been some crazy college stuff too, right?
We got name, image, likeness in Florida high schools now, right? Like,
I know,
think about high school kids in Florida will be able to get NIL money. Like, it takes one of them losing a $10,000 bet they can't pay off. That all of a sudden they're in Florida, and then they're next thing you know they're playing for the Dolphins.
That'd be the most worried about. Centers, quarterbacks, running backs. Like, those are the ones that would be like, if I were on the other side, I'd be the ones hitting. Because those are the ones that handle the ball, a fumble at the wrong time, something of that, a bad snap, like a long snapper would be a person that you maybe want to hit.
Oh,
I shouldn't be dropping all these ideas right now. But but you have to look at a game with 22 people on the field. You have to look at the ones that are the most, that can impact the play, most likely are the ones that can influence these things. So that's this is how the people in Vegas and probably the FBI and all these people focus on, is the ones that are most susceptible to that stuff.
Yeah, but I'll go back to C-Rob's point. Risk versus reward in all of this for the league. the risk that you take is not
just
worth the reward.
eliminate
And for the individual players, all right, so you can't gamble for a few years. Like, cool.
Yeah, right.
When you get out of the league, go
I
do
managed
whatever
to do
you
it my
want.
whole
when you get-
life. And then finally it was like, okay. And then finally I was able to walk into a sports book at 28 years old after, because I was associated with teams my whole life and my dad was. So I knew the rules because it was like, it wasn't worth it.
And look, guys,
It never was.
we're realistic human beings. We know even if there's a rule, it will get broken, right? I mean, there are rules all the time that get broken. But I think the ability, the absolute clarity of coming out and saying, as a league, Roger Goodell steps to a podium and says, here, today, we're starting this. It is zero tolerance. You do not gamble. You do not gamble. If we catch you gambling, there are going to be staggering consequences. I think what comes on the other end of that, there are still people who are going to break it. But there is this idea of now being a pariah. And it being zero tolerance means there's no gray area. It's pretty clear what you're doing.
Yeah.
Like if you're gambling, period. If you're gambling, it's gambling. You cross the line. And I think there's this sort of pariah label attached to it, the scarlet letter, where you're like, it's scarier than, well, you can gamble on some things, but just
Right.
don't gamble on our league, but you can gamble on other leagues. Don't gamble on other leagues on our bus. Like don't gamble
The
on other
gray
leagues
area, yeah.
in our building or in our parking lot. But once you clear the fence in your car, you can go ahead and gamble on other things that aren't our league. No, just make it zero and hope that for the most part you wipe away. And also, by the way, Fitz, you make a good point. The systems in place are working. Vegas is clearly working. Vegas has been a huge help to the NFL in catching players who are betting or third-party individuals who are betting. But guess how much easier it is when you know if a name that is recognizable ever crosses your desk in any way, shape, or form. You don't have to do the matrix of, well, where were they? Were they on a bus? Were they at the facility? Like, okay,
IP
they
address.
bet, but yeah, right? Like, it's just, no, that's the name. That's a person in the league. That's not allowed. Boom.
Yep.
It's pretty simple, right? That helps out the casinos as well. Or I don't want to say the casinos, the bookmakers. It's not like it's just casinos anymore. It's the gambling industry. It helps to, regulate it as well on their end.
From off the field to on the field as we get out of here, we'll take a look at some minicamp headlines. All right, we're going to buy or sell. We're going to power hour. We're going to run through these. I'm going to give you some headlines from minicamp. We're going to figure out if you guys are buying or selling. Number one, Bijan Robinson told reporters the Falcons offense is going to be more run first. This is his quote. I'm going to be more of a runner that does everything else. It's like run first like I did in college and then still have access to go to receiver, still have access to do creative things out of the backfield. More so like how they use Christian McCaffrey down there in San Francisco, something like that. That's kind of what the plan is here. Are we buying or selling Nate Tice that Bijan Robinson will ascend to CMC status by the end of the season?
I'm selling it a little bit, but I'm buying that it'll be a very good season for Bijan. But I thought he was going to say Kyron Williams, not CMC. I thought it was going to be more like the Rams.
Yeah,
and just
right.
Pound the
The Rams
freaking rock. That's what I thought the answer would be. So if he said Kyron Williams, huge buy, heavy buy. But CMC, I don't know. I thought Arthur Smith already kind of hinted, tried to use the Bijan that way.
Right.
I thought Bijan was a little overwhelmed in that role last year. I love Bijan, don't get me wrong. But yeah, selling a little bit, but buying that's going to be a big season from him.
I'm selling it. I don't buy it because I don't think he's as good as Christian McCaffrey. I'm sorry, I just
different
don't.
player.
I think he's a different player. He's more finesse player to me than Christian McCaffrey is. So I'm selling it. I don't see it.
I'm going to sell it too. And by the way, you make a great point, C-Rob. Maybe we should stop making CMC comparisons and just acknowledge that like we're seeing a great right now, do great things, and not anybody can live up to that hype. All right, next up, AD Mitchell apparently going off at minicamp. The Athletics' James Boyd said Richardson launched a deep ball down the sideline to Mitchell, who, after beating cornerback Darrell Baker, contorted his body to make an over-the-shoulder grab that drew a roar of approval from the offense. The highlight reel play explains why the Colts were willing to take a swing. AD Mitchell, best rookie wide receiver. C-Rob, you buying or selling it?
Oh my God, Elijah Moore was so awesome last year before the season started.
And
oh
year
my
two.
God. Oh my God, Traylon Burks. Holy shit. Did you see Traylon
yes.
Burks in OTAs or the type? Look, no offense. I think AD Mitchell is going to be a really good player. 2024's best rookie wide receiver. Well, Michael Pittman might have something to say about some of that production. Josh Downs might have something to say about that production. I don't know. Anthony Richardson's legs eating up.
I was going to say the entire run game. Yeah.
The entire run game. Yeah, exactly. The backfield. I think opportunity probably tamps that down a little bit. I love that he looks good. I love that everybody's excited about OTAs, but I have taken the hook, line, and sinker on guys being amazing in OTAs and even training camp and absolutely gotten obliterated. I'm still waiting for who's the wide receiver for the Kansas City Chiefs, the Clemson kid who is killing it.
Ross.
Justin Ross.
Justin Ross.
Yeah. Oh my God.
Ross is my guy, man.
Guys, I ate Justin Ross up in the preseason last year, and then the whole season, I'm like, what the hell is going on?
It has to be something else. I know. It's like, why is this guy not playing? Yeah, Mitchell. I'm buying Mitchell. I'm selling all OTA highlights. Everybody looks good in shorts. That's okay. how it goes. We'll see him pass. But I really do like AD Mitchell. I do think he'll be perfect for that offense too. But yeah, it's wait until we get to pads in preseason.
I just can't wait till we get to preseason when inevitably some 5'2" tiny wide receiver for the Raiders has 10 catches in the game, and I become convinced he's going to be the answer. It happens every year.
And he's wearing like 24, 26. Yeah, that's how you know.
And then at the end of the year he gets cut right before the season, and I'm like, how can they cut him? Like, how could they make such a drastic? I'm the worst. All right. Speaking of the worst, Quentin Johnson, wide receiver 1. I couldn't resist. The Chargers wide receiver coach said the second-year wideout has, quote, got a lot of juice and made a, quote, big jump. Are we buying Nate Tice that Quentin Johnson can be wide receiver 1 for the Chargers?
I am selling it this year. I think Ladd McConkey is going to be that receiver 1 for him. I think he's going to hit the ground running, especially in that offense. Johnson, I still think has a role in this league. I think he got square pegged round hole as a rookie, but I don't think he's a receiver 1. I think he's going to be a high-end complementary piece, if anything, this year.
The juice isn't the problem. It's never been the problem.
No, it's never the juice.
The juice wasn't the problem at TCU. It was the rocks in his gloves. It's the rocks in his hands.
Yes.
It's the granite hands that have been part. And I don't mean, I like him as a player, okay? And I know I say that, and it's makes a good clip and everything. It probably pisses him off if he sees it. Quentin, I really like you as a player. But yeah, I mean, you have to resolve the drops first. I don't think he's a guy who's necessarily going to have problems getting open or beating, man coverage or whatever. It's just, you got to catch the ball when it gets there. And Nate, I am in Nate's camp. I think Ladd McConkey is, when we talk about the AD Mitchell best rookie receiver in the class, I think it could be Ladd McConkey by the end of the year, to be honest with you.
Well, all right, Nate, importantly, before we wrap this up, scale of 1 to 10, what was your experience like? Would you like 10. To filling out a survey?
Is this the highly dissatisfied and highly satisfied?
How likely are you recommending?
I'm going highly satisfied.
Yeah, man, I'm
going to Apple Podcasts to give it a 5 stars.
Okay, I like that.
He knows the host is sensitive. That's how he answers.
Well, that is. I mean, you don't wear a shirt like this and not be sensitive. By the way, I missed the hat memo. Like we got forward hat, we got backward hat. Like I could have gone trucker hat or sideways hat or
2 hats and a hawk. We're good.
Okay.
Yeah.
You're gonna do the Jamie Kennedy sideways hat. Forward, backwards, sideways.
Upside down, backwards.
Upside down, backwards.
Look, it wouldn't be the dumbest I've ever looked in public. Okay, C-Rob, before we get out of here, tell everybody a bit about how we continue to support the legacy of Terez Paylor.
Yeah, if you can check out breakingtea.com/Terez, you can get your All Juice tee or hoodie. Remember that proceeds from that purchase go to support the Terez Paylor Scholarship at Howard University. You can give money directly to that, as well as the scholarship in his name at Missouri if you check out our podcast description. So we always appreciate some contributions to that scholarship fund.
Yeah, the links are in the summary for the episode on YouTube or your podcast app, so you can check it out there too. Brett and Tony producing, doing God's work behind the scenes, keeping us actually on track today. I feel like we accomplished everything that was in front of us because they are great leaders.
An hour.
I know. Look at this. You can follow us on social media at Nate_Tice. Nate, are you not big? Can we not just muscle Nate Tice? Who's got Nate Tice?
Where do we find that guy?
Someone else had it. Someone else got it before me. It was whatever it was, 12 years ago. Yeah, I was still in college. I made this. Yeah, and that person tweets sports takes too. Hot ones.
Still new ones, like recent ones?
Yeah. He's a person that calls in a radio show type.
Have you caught fire because of this guy?
Once somebody came at me about just only one, but I think he got a reply once, like someone asking him a genuine question, and the guy was good. He goes, "I think you mean this Nate Tice," and I was like, "Oh, okay, all right, cool. At least he got it right."
I have Charles Robinson, the professional wrestling referee.
Oh, Lil Nate.
Yeah, Lil Nate, and we each both catch hell periodically over. I'll get this worst match ever. What the hell's wrong with you? I'm like, I directed to him. Like we've become friends over the years.
I love those
from our misdirected.
The tweets. Sean King one always gets me.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Many years
one
ago,
of it.
somebody else had Jason Fitz. So many years ago, the people at Twitter kindly just kicked him off and gave it to me instead.
Ooh,
Look at that.
look at that. Look at that
Really?
privilege. Look at that
just saying,
privilege.
Really?
That's how the other half lives. I just
That's a nice
had
Twitter
some phone
handle
calls
you
with
got
him.
there.
Jason
Be ashamed
Fitz.
if someone's-
What the
That's all
hell?
I
Why
got.
don't you help
Something with
out
it.
Tice here? Come on, help
Well,
Nate.
Tice gave us a 10. I'm not willing to it was an 8.5. You got to bring a little bit more if you want me to start getting Twitter.
Oh,
involved,
man.
Tyson.
He even
yeah.
fluffed up the grade, and
Yeah,
you're not
get
going to
the
help him get his
I know,
X
I
handle.
tried.
Jeez.
I've ruined the curve and everything for the rest of the class.
As always, rate, subscribe, review, tell your friends, your family, tell your enemies, tell everybody. Hang out with us every single week, unless you didn't like the show, in which case, don't. All right, that's it for us. Come back next week. We'll be back with more Zero Blitz.